Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to everyone's favorite show about plastic surgery, health, and beauty. This is Nip Talk. Today's topic, first off, should breast implants go above or below the muscle? I thought this debate was settled 2 decades ago, but it's making a resurgence, and we're going to talk about it. Then, the gold plastic surgery chain is under fire from multiple sources. We're going to talk about them. And then finally, did you know that there's one religion that loves plastic surgery? I bet you won't guess what it is. We're going to find out coming up right now.
Live from Lincoln Center in the heart of the Dallas Metroplex, this is Nip Talk. An honest and uncensored show about plastic surgery, health, beauty, and lifestyle. With your host, plastic surgeon Dr. Bruce Hermann, and your co-host, entrepreneur and social media influencer Sarah Bennett. Now it's time to discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of the topics everyone is talking about. It's time for Nip Talk.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Also remember that all our segments are on audio, and you can find them on all of the local podcasts. I'm your host, plastic surgeon Dr. Bruce Hermann. With me, as always, is the wonderful Sarah.
Hi.
Hello, wonderful
how's it
Sarah.
Going?
How are you today?
Good.
In the box, we got Travis. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing good. Back off from a week's vacation, which was really nice.
Absolutely.
We did Alaska. I meant to bring a video. I have like the coolest video, not to like bore you guys with my vacation photos because I respect you guys too much for that. But I did have one really cool video. We were actually out like in the bush of Alaska. We did this like back roads Jeep thing. And we saw a live grizzly bear.
Oh, wow.
Right on.
And while I was filming this live grizzly bear, this bald eagle comes out of nowhere, like right above the bear, like right towards us. Like it was the craziest thing.
Oh, God.
I meant to like take the video and I didn't even post it on my social. Like I said when I got home I was gonna like, do a couple of pics or whatever, and then I just got busy.
You was like Dr. Doolittle for like 10 minutes.
It was, man. It was crazy. Well, I didn't think that we would see a bear.
American flag.
I know, right? There should have been an American flag in it.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
But
it would have probably been like the most American picture ever.
it was pretty sweet. Like I was actually pretty impressed. I was like, dang, that's actually a pretty cool video. I mean, the bear's kind of like a little bit far away, thankfully, because I'm not a big fan of bears. Like they kind of scare me. Like they're powerful animals. And,
Absolutely.
And but so yeah, I was like down in like this creek, and I was like, I was watching, and then this eagle comes flying up. I was like, dang, this is like all American vacation.
Can I see the impression of the eagle one more time?
Yeah, it's like
I love it.
Hey, but I'm gonna tell you guys, Alaska is a pretty cool vacation. I was a little concerned that maybe the kids wouldn't appreciate it as much, but they loved it. We did like whale watching, like in a tiny little boat, which it was so funny. So my wife's not like sporty spice, and so one of the things that we did was get into these. Have you heard of Zodiacs? So a Zodiac's basically an inflatable boat with like a super powerful motor on it that you're like out on the open ocean. And so like right before we left, I was sending her like these videos of this whale that like breached up and like smashed this boat. And she's like, why would you send me that? Why would you do that? You know we're gonna be in a small boat.
That is scary.
So we did that, and then we took another smaller boat, not quite that small, up to a glacier, which is really cool. I'd actually seen a glacier before, but before I had ever seen a glacier, I just didn't really understand what a glacier was.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys seen Game of Thrones, right? No, you guys don't watch Game of Thrones, do you? Both of y'all? Oh,
A glacier, like a big
like the
chunk
wall
of ice?
Yeah, like that big wall of ice that's
Right.
like kind of what a glacier is. And
Yeah.
it's actually really impressive.
Did they tell you like how deep it goes down into the water and stuff?
No, that's a great question. I wish I would have thought to ask that. I mean, the thing was massive.
Because they're supposed to be bigger at the
like
bottom.
the icebergs. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
they're
come
supposed
off
to
of
be
it.
bigger at the bottom than they are.
I bet it's really, really big because they were telling us that the fjords, so they're called fjords, it's basically a valley in between two mountains with water, was like really, really, I can't remember exactly, but it was really, really deep. So I assume the glacier is as deep as that. Like
Yeah.
it's not just floating on there.
Yeah.
I hate to bore you guys. I'll bring like one or two next time. I meant to do it and I just totally forgot when I was prepping last night.
Nah, I find it super interesting.
Yeah, cool. I'll bring a couple on the show. But Alaska's cool. If you guys haven't been to Alaska, I think it's super awesome. It's very rural and kind of rugged, especially down where we were in like the southeastern part of it. But it was beautiful. And if you like the outdoors and stuff, like it's just amazing. So I'm in the boat. We did Norwegian cruise lines, and they were great. I've never been on a Norwegian before, and it was actually really good. So
Yeah.
So thumbs up on that. And I don't know, I don't think that they're like much more expensive than like cruises in the Caribbean.
I don't know. I'm like I said, my parents went on one. They liked it. So now you're the second person I know that really liked it.
Yeah, it was really cool. And like I said, the kids really loved it. In fact, both of them were like, this might be one of the best vacations we've ever taken. And I was like, oh, cool, okay. That's good to know. Yeah. I was a little nervous that they wouldn't like it as much, but
good.
So anyway, yeah, Alaska was cool. I'll bring something next week. I totally forgot, but all right. Did you guys do anything good last week? Anything exciting? Same old stuff?
Nothing crazy. Yeah, on my end at least.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I just, I hadn't seen you guys in a little while. I miss you guys. Want to make sure you guys are all right.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Okay, let's jump into some segments. So, man, I'll tell you, this first segment's pretty interesting because this is talking about breast implants and whether it's best to put them above or below the muscle, which the other word for that would be subglandular, which means above the muscle, or submuscular, which would be below. And this is something that used to be a little bit of a debate when I first started plastic surgery in the mid-2000s. Now, Sarah, I know I've asked this a million times, but you've been very upfront about the fact you've had surgery. Did they ask you about that when you went to get your surgery? Like, was there any mention of it?
Yeah, my doctor said he wouldn't do the surgery unless it was below the muscle.
Okay, that's interesting to know. I'm kind of the same way, actually. And I can't remember when you said you got yours. If you got them a long time ago.
I got them when I was like 22, and I'm 35 now.
So you got them basically around 2010. That's about when it went to being all under the muscle.
He said he said some people he would, but not for me because I was just so petite.
Yeah, and that may have been to you. Okay, I'll explain what that means. Okay, so he said for you specifically, not that he wouldn't do them. Okay, interesting. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you people what this means, because it's one thing for me to say above or below the muscle. It's another to see a picture. So throw that first picture up there, Travis, if you would. Nope.
The modern boob job.
There should be one that's a photo. That's the article. Isn't there one that's like 3 photos, Travis?
Yeah, give me just a second.
Okay. It may have gotten out of order in there. Sorry about that. It's like a picture. It's like an infographic. And anyway, what the picture is going to show is, yeah, here we go. Perfect. All right. So the one on the far left is what we call above the muscle. So obviously the yellowish tissue is breast tissue, the kind of light blue is a breast implant, and then the red is the muscle. And you see that the implant is sitting above that muscle, but in between the breast tissue and the muscle. So that would be what you call above the muscle or subglandular. The middle one is what you would call your classic submuscular or below the muscle. You see that the muscle's been lifted up and the muscle is draping over the majority of the implant. And then the last one is the one that I really do, which I still consider to be submuscular, but it's called biplanar, because what you do in a biplanar is you actually are releasing the breast tissue off the very bottom part of that muscle so that the muscle pulls up a bit. And so I would say that the left one, the far left, is above the muscle, classic subglandular, and both of the other ones are submuscular, but one is slightly different, and I'll explain what that means. But does that make sense now when you see this? Like,
yeah.
I mean, because it can be kind of a nebulous concept above, below the muscle, but that's what we mean there. So anyway, I saw an article in this magazine called Allure, so that's that next photo. Yeah, so you can look this up. This just came out, isn't that today? The 8th? August 8th? What is today?
Today is the 9th, actually, so it was yesterday.
Oh, it came out yesterday?
Yeah, okay. It was yesterday.
Dude, it just came out. Yeah, I saw this yesterday. So anyway, Allure magazine, I've heard of them. So I was like, oh, okay, this might be interesting. I hated the article. There was a lot of things I didn't like about it because it really kind of pushed some things, which I'm not really big fans of. And of course, if you look hard enough, you'll find people that will basically say anything is good. And so they had these surgeons talking about this.
Yeah.
The 2 things I didn't like about it is they were kind of pushing subglandular implants, which is the main thing that we're going to talk about today. And they're also talking about the internal bra, which we really need to do a segment on that because I'm not a huge fan of that too. But I didn't want to try to combine it because it
sounds very uncomfortable.
The internal bra?
Yeah.
Just the sound of it. Have we talked about it, the internal bra?
No.
It's like using mesh on the inside of a breast.
You have.
Yeah, we haven't really done a full segment on it, and we need to do that. We'll probably do that next week.
We have talked about that.
But I want to mostly talk about that they were really kind of pushing subglandular, meaning above the muscle, breast implant placement. And as I said, when I was in plastic surgery training, so this is 2007, at that point in time, it was still kind of up for debate whether you put them below the muscle or above. I would say the majority of people were doing below the muscle, but at least was debated. And at the time, and I was like a very young plastic surgeon at that point, obviously because I was still in training, I kind of gravitated towards below the muscle. And I guess I'll tell you why. Let's talk about the advantages, or what they say the advantages of doing above or below. So they say that the advantages of doing subglandular or above the muscle is that there's less pain in surgery, which that would make sense. You're not like lifting a muscle up, which when you operate on muscles, that does tend to cause more pain.
Yeah, I remember being pretty sore.
Do you? That's interesting. Okay, we'll talk about that. And then the other thing is that when you do above the muscle, there is at least reportedly less deformity of the breast with chest animation. So like, for example, if you were, exercising your chest, there would be less movement of the implants if it's above the muscle. So those are the stated advantages. The stated advantage of going below the muscle is there's better coverage of the implant, which is good because the implant can be visible if you don't have enough tissue over it, which makes it look very artificial very quick. And the other thing is that if you go below, there's no concern about tissue thickness, which goes back to what your surgeon told you. When your surgeon told you that you were too petite to do above the muscle, there's a pinch test that you do on the breast tissue. And I remember this back from the 2000s whenever we used to evaluate people to see if they were or were not candidates. If you can't pinch at least 2 centimeters of breast tissue and you don't have enough tissue to cover the implant, and doing it above the muscle is a bad idea for that person. So by doing it below, you don't have to worry about that because you might pinch people, and if they're like, well, they're 1.75, do you tell them no or whatever. And so anyway, as a fellow, I gravitated towards doing submuscular implants because they were more popular at the time. You got better coverage of the implant. I really felt like the post-op pain thing was a non-factor. I know we've talked about breast implant surgery and the recovery. I find it to be one of the easiest recoveries of any surgery I do. I mean, a lot of our patients that do breast augs will do them on Friday and be back to work on Monday. I mean, it's hard to argue that a surgery where you can go back to work in 3 days is so sore that you have to change it up, which if there was no downsides to it, I might be amenable to that, but there are downsides. And as far as the animation deformity, that purely is a technique thing. If you do a biplanar dissection, or even not a biplanar, but just do enough dissection of the muscle, I've had 0 patients come back in 15 years complaining of animation deformity, and I've done over 1,000 augmentations. What
does that mean?
So animation deformity, have you ever seen the video of a woman with breast implants and they flex their chest and the implants rise up like really unnaturally? Have you ever seen that?
No.
I assume it's not something you have an issue with then, because you don't even know what I'm talking about. Okay, that means that your surgeon that means your surgeon did a good job. There should not be animation deformity. If you're doing submuscular implants and your patients are getting animation deformity, you're not doing it correctly. Period. I mean, because people who do lots of implants like myself, obviously your surgeon that did yours, there's a way to do submuscular implants where animation deformity is not an issue. And so that automatically should be stricken from the reasons that you would do above the muscle. I mean, because you can do them below and still have it be done right. And it's all about the dissection. If you don't dissect the muscle enough, then what happens is, if you imagine the implant here and your muscle here, the muscle can catch that implant and lift it up.
Yeah.
But if the muscle is over the top, go back to that video or that picture, Travis, that I showed, the very first one that we had trouble finding at first. Yeah, right. So if you look at that middle picture and you imagine that muscle pulling that implant, you can imagine that muscle might lift the implant up, right? Because it's kind of hooked underneath it. But when you look at the one on the right, where the muscle is more on the top of it, that muscle can slide over it and the implant's not going to move as much. Does it make sense looking at the picture?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So one of the big reasons, the 2 big reasons that people say, you need to do subglandular above the muscle is less pain and recovery. Well, I mean, my patients tell me that I would say 90% of my patients say this is much, much easier than I expected, and it's an easy recovery. And then the animation deformity is not an issue. So I never really saw the benefits of doing above the muscle, subglandular, and there's definitely downsides. And what ended up happening to kind of end the debate in the 2000s is there were some research papers that came out kind of in the late 2000s that showed if you look at submuscular versus subglandular, meaning below the muscle or above the muscle, there was a higher rate of capsular contracture, which is the number one risk of breast implant surgery, is capsular contracture. There's a higher rate if you put it above the muscle versus below. And it wasn't just one paper that said that, it was multiple papers. And when those papers kind of came out and people saw them, subglandular or above the muscle implants basically faded away. And I'm a little surprised in 2010 that your surgeon, maybe even suggested it to you, because when I started in 2010, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing any more above the muscle. There's not really a good reason to do them, and there's definitely downsides. And another one of the risks that is out there is the risk of the implant getting out of position, which is higher if you don't put it below the muscle, especially even towards the middle. And there's a paper, I didn't want to pull like 50 papers, but I pulled like one big paper. Throw up that last clip, yeah. So this is a paper fairly recent, it's from 2017, I believe. And this looked at a ton of patients. I think it was like 18,000 patients that had breast implants. And they found that the adjusted relative risk, which basically means how much more likely is a complication going to happen, is 2.9 times higher to get capsular contracture if you have above the muscle or subglandular versus below the muscle. That's basically three times the risk of the most common complication of breast augmentation surgery if you put it above versus below. And for me, it's like, for what benefit?
Yeah.
I mean,
Post-surgery for 3 days being a little bit more comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I just don't see it. Like, and I don't think it's crazy. I mean, if people are out there doing, above the muscle implants, I don't think it's crazy you're doing it, but my question is why? Like, why are you doing it?
Isn't it, I feel like the ones that are above the muscle would be more for like those really obnoxiously large implants that people sometimes get. Can you even put like
No,
really
I
big
would say that
implants underneath?
if you're going with bigger implants, you definitely want to put it below the muscle.
But then how does it fit? You just have to like.
Because the muscle is almost imagine like it's a piece of cloth. Like muscle,
Okay.
it's like a thin layer. Like your chest muscle is, I mean, it depends. Like obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to have like some, big old steak looking pec muscles, but like the average pec muscle is something like this.
Okay.
It's not big at all, especially in women. I mean, some women are that work out a lot. I'll go in there like, oh dang, this girl's got like a pretty big pec muscle, but in general, it's pretty thin, so it lifts up very, very easy. So, that's not really a factor. So I mean, just to kind of summarize, like I myself these days, I only do below the muscle. To me, there's no real advantage of going above. The whole thing about being less pain is a non-factor because it's really, like breast augmentation surgery in general is a very easy recovery surgery. Yeah. And animation deformity shouldn't be an issue. If you're getting animation deformity from doing submuscular implants, you're doing them wrong. Now that doesn't mean that you won't see like a tiny bit of movement. I mean, if somebody flexes really hard, like the most you used to see is the breast just kind of tense. Okay. But it doesn't look unnatural. Like animation deformity to me is when the breasts like are lifting. You can find videos out there. I'll have to bring one. I'm surprised you haven't seen it because they're on TikTok all the time. It's like, oh, let me show you this party trick, and this girl flexes and her implant goes, vroom, vroom. Like that's just like bad work. Like there's just no other way to say it. And so, because of the two big reasons that people are touting it, like I just don't see it. I think that people that are doing it for marketing gimmicks. Mm-hmm. I mean, plastic surgery is ultra competitive, and you can set yourself apart by doing something differently. I mean, it's a way to get more business. And so I see these people doing it either they were trained by someone who really believes in this, or maybe they're just trying to be different. I personally, and like I said, I do breast surgery all the time, train with like one of the most famous breast surgeons in the world. Like I just don't see the need, and I think that I'm in the majority. I mean, I was really shocked to see that article that was talking about that above the muscle implants are making a comeback.
They probably just needed something to write about.
Huh?
It sounds like they just needed something to write about.
Yeah, and I hate to be like cynical, but I mean, academic medicine, like that's a lot of like just people like just trying to think of something to like come up with to do differently. And I think you see it when people are marketing. It's like, how can I set myself apart? And I'm going to say the same thing when we talk about the internal bra whenever we do that segment. I mean, it's just like people saying, oh, this is new and this is like better because of X, Y, and Z, and the data, doesn't really support that.
Yeah.
And the one thing I would say, I mean, just to be completely transparent, the one advantage I see, like in doing above the muscle versus below, would be honestly in someone like yourself who really works out a lot, because I tell my patients that do below the muscle implants, all right, for 4 weeks you can't work out. okay? Which that should be standard for any surgery. I mean, you shouldn't really be working out until you're at least 3 or 4 weeks out because of the risk of bleeding. But at the 3 to 4 week period or 1 month period, I say, okay, you can work out, but no chest workouts, because that muscle is so strong, and if you really work out your chest muscle, it can push that implant out of position. Now, what ends up happening is after about 3 months, a layer forms around that implant. It's locked in. It's not going anywhere. So at 3 months, you can really do whatever you want. But the one advantage of doing above versus below the muscle is you wouldn't have that added time where you couldn't do chest workouts. But realistically, there's not a huge number of women that are doing that intense chest workouts.
Besides like bodybuilders.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that you probably do some chest stuff in your CrossFit.
I did yesterday.
Yeah, right. So like, if you
bench
came to
press.
me, I would just be like, look, just don't do chest workouts for a couple months. I mean, it's just that simple.
Luckily, whenever I had mine done, I wasn't like working out.
Yeah, you weren't doing it that intense.
I wasn't doing CrossFit and stuff. I was still young enough to like barely work out and still look athletic still.
It's nice when that's the case, isn't it? But yeah, I just want to touch base with this. These articles like pick up steam, and then what'll happen is someone will post a TikTok about it's like, oh well, if you do this above the muscle augmentation, then you can work out immediately, and your breasts won't have the deformity. And then they'll show a picture of somebody that has bad deformity, and people will get in their minds like, oh, maybe this is the better way. I mean, like I said, this debate was settled like 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
For the most part, and it's just kind of weird to see it popping back up. I mean, I thought about texting some of my friends or plastic surgeons and being like, "Are you seeing this?" Because I imagine that they would be like, "Yeah, I don't know why people are doing this," but it's good to talk about. I mean, like I said, it's not crazy if you want to do above the muscle, but you definitely are opening yourself up to increased complication.
Yeah.
I mean, you just are. Like, I mean, there are there's 1 or 2 studies out there that shows that maybe it's that it's not that bad, but there's a ton of studies that show, yes, your risks definitely go up. And so when there's so many studies that say that your risks go up, I mean, you have to believe it.
Yeah, I agree.
Not good, nice. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's good to talk about these things, and it'd be interesting. I actually wish I could find a plastic surgeon that did a lot of above the muscles and bring them on. We could like have a debate about it.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Plastic surgeons arguing about like technique is just like, it's like junkyard dogs, man. Like, just go at it.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a doctor thing, though.
All right, let's move on. I have all plastic surgery topics today. There was a lot going on in the plastic surgery world. Hope you guys are ready.
No crazy death stories, though.
I do have a kind of crazy story.
Oh.
Have you guys ever heard of Goals plastic surgery?
Golds?
Goals, like G-O-A-L-S, Goals.
No.
I saw several articles about Goals plastic surgery, which is a chain. Plastic surgery chain. So it's like the plastic surgery patient mills, which I always called them. And this was like all over the news. And these guys are under fire. Like, this Goals place is getting kind of like beat down from a couple directions, because I saw different articles like talking about it in different ways, like all in a row. So Goals is a plastic surgery chain. And if you guys have not watched a lot of my videos, I do not like plastic surgery chains. And at the end, I'll tell you why I don't like them. I don't like plastic surgery chains. And basically what that means, a plastic surgery chain is a business that markets to plastic surgery patients without the doctor necessarily being really involved. They'll say, come in, you get this really cheap plastic surgery, and you'll get treated by one of our great doctors, but you're going to the facility, not the doctor. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of problems with that, in my opinion. So Goals is a plastic surgery chain. They got a dozen clinics in the states of Alabama, California, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And the first thing I saw was actually an article about the Better Business Bureau, and I clipped that one, throw it up there. Yeah, Better Business Bureau warns of complaints against plastic surgery clinic, and its Goals is the one that they're talking about. They got so many complaints about them that they gave them their worst rating, which is an F, I guess, for failure. Or I guess I think Better Business Bureau goes up to like AA+ or something. So like there's a lot of ratings in there. Well, they gave them a rating of F due to the fact they got so many complaints. And then they asked them to like respond to stuff, and apparently they didn't. And the next thing I saw was this article from 2022 in the Marie Claire, I think I got a pic of that one. Yeah, They called this place a little shop of horrors.
Ew.
That is not good, man. Like if you like have like a medical practice and they call it the little shop of horrors, that is not good. And so that article went into a lot of detail about numerous like alleged bad outcomes. Well, and there were deaths in there too. So I mean, those are not necessarily alleged; those did happen. From their surgeons, and there was like, doctors being inappropriate, and there were allegations of sexual misconduct. And it went into a lot of detail about this place. And the most shocking thing that I found, because I don't like these places, but this one really kind of shocked me. So this Goals was started by a Dr. Sergey Voskin, all right, who actually started it was doing plastic surgery procedures. You guys want to guess what kind of doctor this is? Like what his training was?
General
surgery? I wish. Travis, any idea?
A foot doctor.
Yeah, that's about where we're at. So he was a pediatrician.
Ew.
Not like a pediatric surgeon. Not a pediatric surgeon.
A pediatrician.
Like your pediatrician that you take Avery to would be like if that person opened up a plastic surgery clinic. Yes, I was pretty like stupefied when I learned that. I mean, that's craziness. I mean, I get kind of, I get miffed when other surgeons do plastic surgery because they don't have the training for it. It'd be like if I wanted to do, ear, nose, and throat surgery. I'm not trained for that. It would be, not good for me to do it. But this is a non-surgeon who opened a surgery practice and then, got enough patients that he opened more. And he also continued to hire non-plastic surgeons to do the surgeries, which I'm totally against that. Plastic surgeons we trained for at least 6, if not 7. I did 8 years of surgical training to do what I do, and then board certification, to have like non-surgeons doing these surgeries.
Well, it's like, I feel like when you go to a plastic surgeon, like a real one like yourself, it's like you pay for like,
I mean, you're paying
you pay for it to look like you didn't have surgery. And I feel like if you go to a surgeon, they're just like, yep, let me just
let me just kind of do something here. Yeah, I mean, general surgery is very mechanic.
Let me do it the least, like let me do it the fastest, most efficient way, not like
right.
the
Yeah,
best
exactly.
way.
Because there's a big difference between a general surgeon and a plastic surgeon. I mean, general surgery is very mechanical. Plastic surgery is very artistic, and it's just a completely different field. And training in one does not mean that you can do the other. And so the story gets even crazier. So the most recent article that popped up about them, throw this next one up, I think it was from Independent. Yeah, Independent. And they actually quoted the Shop of Horrors from the previous article. So apparently what ended up happening was they had a office manager that basically became a whistleblower because she was so, I guess, appalled at all of the bad outcomes that she was seeing. She actually stole like a bunch of like medical records and like photos and everything, and then mass emailed them out to like 60 different media outlets. And so that's how like this.
I wonder how long she was working there. If
like
she
years.
Just,
it was years, yeah. And so I guess that's what brought up that 2022 article by what was it, Marie Claire. Mm-hmm. And now the reason it popped back up is because this place is suing her for $5 million, saying that it was
like defamation or something.
Yeah, defamation or trade secrets, I guess, that they gave away.
How is that a trade secret?
I don't know.
You're really bad at doing this? That's a trade secret.
I mean, the one way that I see that she could definitely get in trouble is she did probably violate HIPAA unless she blurred out people's names. And names and like, even like but showing pictures even is violation of HIPAA without consent. Now, maybe she picked one that gave consent to the play. I mean, I don't know why, because those people, I'm sure, were bad outcomes. I doubt they gave consent, unless that was standard for them, signing their paperwork. Some plastic surgeons will insist that you consent to sharing photos, which I don't. I just ask people, and honestly, most people are pretty cool with it. But if they're not, it's like, oh, no big deal. I mean, we got plenty of people to show photos. But so this story is pretty wild. So like, there's apparently a ton of lawsuits against this. The
whistleblower and
this Goals place.
Oh, and the Goals place.
Well, yeah. So the Goals place is suing the old office manager, but there's apparently a lot of lawsuits against this Goals place that are ongoing right now, both malpractice and I guess some things like brewed up from like all this kind of bad press that they got. So I don't know. I'd never heard of this place. Without knowing any more than what I just read in those articles, I mean, any plastic surgery facility started by a pediatrician, I would absolutely tell people to steer away from. I mean, that's just not good. And if you're hiring people that are also not trained to do this, I mean, it's not shocking that there's all these alleged bad outcomes. And there were some deaths in there.
Plastic surgery is like the Wild West sometimes, I feel like.
You know, it's funny that you say that. You know, places like this
It's like still not controlled.
It's not, right? And places like this exist because of loopholes in the law. You know, these people can't get privileges to do surgery in a surgery center, so they open up their own facility, and they don't have to be regulated if they, and this varies state by state, but the way they get around a lot of it is these facilities don't have to be regulated if they consider surgeries to be like minor procedures. And so they basically state that things like tummy tuck and Brazilian butt lift are minor procedures, and they don't use anesthesia. That's why most of these places don't use any anesthesia, because they have to have it considered a minor procedure. Otherwise, they fall into the scope of needing to be regulated, and if they're regulated, they would lose their license. And so, you know, it's a law needs to fix this, because people are literally dying or getting, you know, gravely injured due to this legal loophole that exists in all of these states. And you know, I mean, we talk time and time again about bad outcomes from these places. I mean, you know, when I'm looking through the news, I'm always looking to see, you know, if there's something notable in the plastic surgery world. And so when you hear these really bad stories, I mean, the majority of the time it seems like it is in these places like this. So why does that happen? Well, there's very little regulation. You know, they oftentimes will hire non-plastic surgeons to do the work because, you know, their gimmick is like very cheap plastic surgery. Well, how do they do that? Well, one, they don't use anesthesia, and they pay the surgeons like pennies on the dollar. Well, you know, very few self-respecting plastic surgeons are going to agree to do that. So it's either people who've had like trouble with the boards, you know, because that one Marie, what was it, Marie? I keep forgetting the name. Marie Claire article talked about how they had employed a bunch of surgeons that were like basically had issues with their board certification in other states, so they move. And then they get hired, you know, at places like this. So, you know, you don't really know who your doctor is. There's no anesthesia for these major cases. There's no oversight. And, you know, when you put all those things together, it's not shocking that people are having bad outcomes. I mean, plastic surgery is real surgery. You know, I mean, it should be minimal risk, but when you start to cut corners by not having the proper training, not having the proper anesthesia, you know, not having a facility that has any regulation or oversight, then suddenly surgeries that should be pretty routine can absolutely become dangerous or even deadly. And you know, we've talked about this like week after week after week, and it sometimes sounds like it's just like a broken record, you know, that hey, this is dangerous, this is dangerous, this is dangerous. And you know, bad things keep happening, and you know, nothing happens. So I don't know. I mean, I think that something big would have to happen for things to change, you know, because what will happen is, you know, people will talk about this. They're like, oh, well, you're infringing upon their business rights or whatever. Well, you know, there's laws that state that I can't open up my own, you know, private charter service for planes if I'm a pilot, right?
I feel like it's just like if you open up a restaurant and you don't know anything about food.
Right. Or like food prep or like safety.
But
you know,
but I could see like if that pediatrician was just an investor with an actual plastic surgeon.
That would be one thing.
Then that would be something that would make sense.
That's not how
because he's just like, oh, this is just going to be a good business. But you don't open up shop without an expert.
It happens all the time. I mean, it's happening here even in Dallas. I mean, a couple years ago, we were talking about an internal medicine doctor that was doing Brazilian butt lifts in their office, which is just no different than a pediatrician doing it.
Just going to Home Depot, getting some.
Well, what they do is they'll go do like a weekend
what
course.
Was that stuff?
You know,
that
they'll go do like a
Cardi B?
weekend course or a week-long course on, you know, how to do these surgeries with some, you know, plastic surgeon with low scruples that thinks that teaching somebody for a week is enough to, you know, make them a surgeon. I mean, it's shady, and like, you know.
You're not getting trained to like use Excel. You're getting trained.
You're right, exactly, like to do major surgery. I don't know. We'll keep talking about it, and
that's all you can do.
Hopefully, something will change. I mean, I just feel bad for the people that get sucked into it, you know, and either die or have these like lifelong complications. Like that story, that If you're interested, you should go check out that Marie Claire article from 2022 because it was so long that I didn't even want to include like all this bad stuff that was in it. I was like, this is like
It's
a
just
dumpster
depressing.
fire. Yeah, I mean, I was like, I'm not even like go through each individual one. So
Yeah.
bad stuff. We'll keep talking about it though. Maybe someday.
Don't go get plastic surgery at a super weird franchise thing.
Yeah, I know. Franchise plastic surgery sounds so bad.
It's like you going to McDonald's to get plastic surgery.
I know. Mixed surgery.
Yeah.
Oh, mixed
That's a new
surgery. That's a
one.
good name for. I'm gonna open up I'm gonna open up my own plastic surgery chain and call it mixed surgery. It could be drive-through.
You get a Happy Meal after you do it.
It could be drive-through too.
Yeah.
Drive-through plastic surgery.
Surgery in your car.
It's the new trend. All right. To finish the trifecta of plastic surgery topics for this week's episode, I found this to be really, really interesting. So there is a lot of data out there and research about who is more or less likely to get plastic surgery. We've talked about this off and on in different ways. So I don't know. I mean, do you guys, any idea who might be more likely to get plastic surgery? I bet you guys can pick one.
Are we talking like
just in general,
Christianity and
no, anything, man,
Buddhism?
like anything, like
Women?
yeah, right. There you go. So women are much more likely to get that's one. People who have body image issues.
Yeah.
You know, people who look at themselves and say, I don't like the way this looks. Obviously, right? Because why would you get plastic surgery if you thought that you look perfect? Interestingly enough, people that have increased social media consumption are more likely to have plastic surgery.
Oh.
Makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean, you see the stuff on social media, and you know, if you see it, you're more comfortable with it, and you're more likely to go get it. Or you might be influenced by an influencer, or like your favorite pop star or actress or whatever. So less likely, people that are less likely to get plastic surgery, and I've seen this, is people who are devout religious
Yeah.
are less likely to get plastic surgery, and that, I guess that makes sense. I mean. Sort of. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't get religious people in my office, because I do. I would say I don't get a lot of devout religious people. Like people that's like, I go to church or
Because
whatever.
it's seen as something as like vain.
Yes, like correct.
And
it was
that's a
interesting.
sin.
It was interesting when I started digging into this, like how many articles popped up, and it was like churches talking about plastic surgery, and it was kind of cringe, to be honest, because I mean, I don't know. It was just like, oh, you know, just make sure that if you're like, we don't really have a stance on this, but you know, we just want to make sure that you're not doing it for the wrong reasons. Which, I mean, I get, right? There are definitely bad reasons to get plastic surgery, but I don't know. It was kind of, I could only get through a couple of them. But interestingly enough, in getting to the point of this topic is, even though religious people get less plastic surgery, did you guys know there is one religion that loves plastic surgery?
Yeah, that's why I answered it
Yeah.
that way the first time, because I thought that's what you
Yeah, there's one religion that loves
don't know.
plastic surgery. Any ideas? Any guesses? Travis, did you cheat? Did you look at some
No, I have not. I'll say Catholics.
Catholics from Travis?
Baptists.
Baptists, both wrong. And looking back, when I read this, I was like, oh, this makes total sense. So it's actually Mormons, Latter-day Saints. So this comes from an article let's see, throw that article up there, Travis, if you would. Yep, this is from, this is an article in the Salt Lake Tribune, which, you know, a lot of Mormons live in Utah. And it was talking about do Latter-day Saints turn to cosmetic surgery in quest for perfection to please God. And it actually was referencing a study that was done by some Brigham Young, I'm not sure they were doctors. I think they were just Brigham Young professors. Throw that next one up there, Travis, in case people want to look it up. Yeah, right here. This is the actual study that was like a survey. And interestingly enough, so the average rate for Mormons to get plastic surgery procedures is 14%. The average rate for them to get non-surgical treatments is 20%. When you compare that to the national average, the national average is 4%. 4% versus 14%.
I mean, that kind of makes sense, because I feel like they're, like, as a girl in that environment, it's like, I feel like they push, like, getting married young, having children young, and it's like, or either having a man having multiple wives.
Oh, right.
All that
Yeah, I
kind
didn't
of
think
stuff.
about that
So it's like,
aspect of it.
I feel like they probably over-sexualize women a lot in that environment. So it's like these girls are like, I have to get married So I have to look that good to get a man.
Man, that's an interesting
or
take.
be the best, or be like the number one wife of 4. And I have to look better.
That's
And
interesting.
I have to,
Well, we're going to dive
much
into that.
pressure.
The first thing I want to say is, when I read it was Mormons, because I would not have guessed. I don't think I would have guessed Mormons. I'm not sure I would have guessed
I
any.
I only have one friend that's Mormon, and she's definitely not like
I
that
have a
at all.
couple, and it's never really kind of came up. The one thing that kind of tipped it off for me, and I was like, oh, that makes total sense. I've always heard that Salt Lake City is known for being a hotbed for plastic surgery. I've heard that many times, that there are a ton of plastic surgeons in Salt Lake. And so I actually did some digging on data. There are more plastic surgeons per capita in Salt Lake City than Los Angeles, than Dallas. Like, whoa, that's pretty crazy. In fact, they are the number 2 city in the entire United States for plastic surgeons per capita is Salt Lake City, with number 1 being, but you know it,
Florida.
yeah, Miami. Yeah, Miami. Also, another interesting fact, breast augmentation is Googled in one state more than any other state, Utah. Isn't that interesting?
Weird.
Yeah, right. Crazy. So I was a little, when I read that, I was like, I would not have guessed that. But then also when I remembered I didn't know about the breast augmentation Google number 1, but I did know that there are a ton of plastic surgeons in Utah. And like, why would there be a ton of plastic surgeons there if a lot of Mormons weren't getting plastic surgery? Because Salt Lake City is very heavily tilted towards Mormon. And so I started wondering myself, okay, why do Mormons get plastic surgery 3 times higher than the national average, which is higher than any other religion? The national average is higher than other religions. And I thought maybe, I was trying to figure this out. I thought maybe, well, this is before I kind of dove into the article. So I kind of see Mormons as being kind of well-to-do, or just in my mind, I didn't know if that was true.
I don't think I've ever met an ugly Mormon.
Huh?
I don't think I've ever met like an unattractive Mormon. Like most of the people that I've seen that are Mormon,
they're pretty well put together, and you're actually getting closer to the answer. I thought it was because Mormons might have more money per capita than other religions, and so I looked that up and I was wrong. Mormons are actually right in the middle. They're just one little tick above average. So it wasn't that they're just rich, because rich people get plastic surgery, and so if a religion has, say there was a religion where everyone in it was dirt poor. Well, obviously no one in that religion is going to get plastic surgery because it's out of pocket. So I was totally wrong on that, but you actually are very close to at least what this article was thinking, is that, and I only know a couple Mormons. I have one friend and we talked a little bit about it, but not into a lot of detail. So I'm speaking based on what I read in the article, that Mormons do believe heavily in being like this perfect, worthy member of the church, like this ideal person, and whether it be spiritually or how they present themselves. And so the article was debating whether or not Mormons feel like they have to change their bodies to make that perfect image.
Got it.
And that kind of goes a little bit towards like
how they view women, I guess maybe.
Well, you were talking about like because they get married young. I don't know, like I don't know enough about Mormons to say if it's even like opine about that. I mean, you probably know as much as I do. I do see this though, because I will tell you that the Mormon people I do know, they all are just very well put together. Like their families, it's like they have perfect families, Or
they appear that way anyway.
They appear that way, right? Like they may not really be perfect, but they appear like this just perfect cookie cutter, like Americana family. And, I could sense that maybe there would be a lot of pressure to not only
in their environment.
In their environment to not only, to be the part, but to look the part. And so that's what the article was kind of like going after, is like, well, it's maybe this thought of being this perfect person, which should, be more spiritual, as kind of filtered into.
Are there more Mormon men that get plastic surgery versus like regular American men?
I will go back and look. I flipped through the article and I didn't notice if it had a breakdown by sex.
Because we know like women will outweigh it, but like I wonder if like
it's about
the
90
percent
to 10.
of men.
Yeah, 90 to 10 is the national average, I believe, for female versus male plastic surgery. Although that's actually, as we've talked about in previous episodes, it's slowly edging up on men. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, and I should have looked that up.
I could see that.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. I tell you, even the Mormon guys I know like tend to be in pretty good shape. Like one of my many business partners is Mormon, and dude like puts me to shame. I mean, I think he works out like every single day. You know, and is that because he's Mormon, or maybe he just loves working out? I don't know. I mean, but
But maybe like people that don't fit that box, that Mormon religion, they're just like, okay, I don't want to be Mormon anymore, and they're just
maybe, or maybe like if you're not like that perfect fit thing, then
they
people,
just kind of
like they still have like shaming. Yeah,
yeah,
they still have shaming in Mormon. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're like, you're not. Yeah, you're not one of us. You need to
weight.
go. Yeah.
But anyway, it was a very interesting article because there's definitely a much higher percentage of Mormons getting plastic surgery than any other religion, and even than the national average. Yeah. And I'm not sure like it's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you know, as long as people aren't going overboard with it. I mean, there's a lot of data to support that having plastic surgery has a lot of like very good benefits for, you know, self-esteem, self-worth, or whatever. But as we've talked about, I mean, obviously you don't want to like take it to an extreme. It's like anything, right? Anything, too much of anything is generally bad.
It's how I live.
Yeah.
Try to, anyways.
But it was interesting to read about that. I'm gonna have to ask my friend about that. I do have a pretty good friend who's Mormon that I talk to pretty regularly, and I didn't see him today. I thought I might run into him, and I was gonna ask him about it.
Yeah, my Mormon friend, she said like that's a really small percentage of people that actually practice polygamy in Mormon.
Oh yeah, I know that's right. Yeah, very, very small percentage.
Yeah, but there's
a few out, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think
but they actually like marry, like they have like four wives, you know.
I've known several Mormon people over the years, and none of them, like to them that was like kind of fringe.
Yeah, that's like
it's like the fringe part of their religion. It's like, you know,
the old ways.
There's like the snake handling Baptists or whatever. Like
that's the ones that's like speak in tongues.
Yeah, right. It's like, you know, that's like their fringe area, I guess.
Yeah.
Everyone's got them.
Yeah.
So, but interesting stuff about the Mormons. But all right, I think that's all we got today. Some pretty good topics. I think you're gonna have one next week. Mm-hmm. I'll probably do the internal bra. So we already got some pretty good ones coming up next week. So make sure you come back, tune in next week. If you want us to talk about a topic, just leave us a comment and maybe we'll hit it on the next episode of Nip Talk. Bye.
Bye.